It's years beyond the worst of it. And it's your time, Mom. A time of head starts and new starts and starting and going and not stopping. Of redos and fixes. Of gazing at full moons and quarter moons and seeing what before were phantasms for reals. If this streak keeps up, it will, why not? You've got the rest of your life. Hell yeah, it's a life. Minus fat-mouthy no accounts. You hope, no, we hope, you and your eldest, that is, this year, next year, and the years after are an age of heartbeats, steady breath, and a healing for your harms. Smart money says you and I are in for seasons and seasons of pewter sunups and cold-ass sunsets and rain. In this state, who can get away from the rain? Shit, you used to think maybe it was the rain. This will be a time of cruising rainy days by your old bus stops, unsoaked, semi-warm, and daydreaming. To be true, Mom, we'll likely see days upon days of yearning. But hey, this might also be the time after a long, long trial of bootsy suitors of your white gown and bouquet. It might be, Mom, but let's keep it funky. If it ain't been in 40 plus years, there's a hell of a chance it won't. You know I would take care of it all if I could, but at present, enough said. So meantime, you're on your own for new gear. For age-sanctioned tops and blouses, jeans and dresses, khakis and slacks, work suits. Until they cut me loose, it's on you to foot new heels and flats and sandals. Yep, sandals, but closed sandals, please, for those sacrilegious toes.
Yeah, brand new day, y'all. Turn me up on the top a little bit, dawg. I want them to know, I want them to hear this one. Loud and clear, bright and early. Listen, I don't hate players, I don't love the game. I'm the shot clock, way above the game. To be point blank with you, motherfuck the game. I got all this work on me, I ain't come for play. You can show the little shorties how you pump and fake, but dog, not to death. I'm not impressed, I'm not amused, I'm not confused, I'm not the dude. I'm grown man minutes, I am not in school. Put your hand down, youngin', this is not for you. On my J.O. with beats by Kanye, yo. My name on the market, your name off the payroll. Style fresh like I'm still a day old. And it's been like that since the day old. I'm on time with a Rollie or Seiko. Step on deck, your neck, do what I say so. Get up or get out, get down or lay low. Standing in the shadow of a fabulous man. Brooklyn nigga, I am that nigga, that dude, black people, let's move. Shout out to my man Talib Kweli, yes, we a topper, shotter, check it out. Slim nigga to cast a big shadow. Cherokee red to shoot the long arrow. Got more skill, more aim, and more ammo. You can get it all from a big or small barrel like Hail Mary, full of grace. Niggas come in and shoot up the place and make it pull up your face. The deck, I'ma pull out the ace from the jungles of the Empire State where ain't no escape. 247-718, and that's like every night, every day. From the place that I settle and stay to the states, I'm collecting my pay. Blast off, then I'm back to the K. Hold it down so my family straight. Representing the family way. Pro ball, not for amateur play. Been raw since the amateur stage. Before the press had the cameras raised. Like a long time handle away. You understand it straight? No doubt. Excellence. It's what it is, and that's what it is. See? Ha. Cause it is deeper, sweeter, richer, crisper. Stronger reception and sharper picture. Revolve around God and involve with niggas. These elements help evolve my scripture and make most death a classic modern figure. Brooklyn, it don't matter if you holler or whisper. You're coming through clear cause I'm right here with ya. Ain't gotta edit your slang, I got it, I get you. Yo, brothers and sisters, fathers and mothers, the lovers, the leavers, the doubters, believers, the stayers, the quitters, the bitches, the niggas, rebel gorillas, the ghetto civilians. Y'all can feel it from the first to the millionth, it's extra. ordinary and plain. I walked 1,000 paces of light ahead of the game. By the time that you get where I'm standing, I'll be gone. Y'all make moves, but y'all just move wrong. I move in and y'all must move on, cause I move too strong, and I know what my feet move for. Make it go without a brand new car. I was fresh without a brand new song. I give a fuck about what brand you are. I'm concerned what type of man you are, what your principles and standards are. You understand me, y'all? Be good to your family, y'all. No matter where your families are, cause everybody need family, y'all. Raise a hand, you understand me, y'all. Everybody need family, y'all. Be good to your families, dawg. Understand? No matter where your families are, everybody need family, dawg. Raise your hands, you understand me, Paul. That's what it is. That's my man. Family of my family, Pencil P. My man, too. All our loved ones behind the walls, all of those still in the struggle. Sada Mumia, Sundiata, Man Jamel, Life is real. To all the real soldiers, black people, family, y'all. Let it be bright. Let it be bright. Let it be bright.
Hey, how's it going, folks? Welcome to the show. Our guest this week is a guy named Mitchell Jackson. Mitchell's a Portland, Oregon native who now lives in New York City. He wrote a book called The Residue Years, which is a fictional account of his own life, the story of his childhood as a basketball player and a writer and a kid growing up in Portland, Oregon in the 1990s who sold drugs in order to make money and survive and be seen, as he says in our conversation, and a complicated relationship he has with his mother, who's also a recovering drug addict. It's a fascinating book about the war on drugs, about our system of mass incarceration, about race relations in the United States and in Portland, Oregon, about a city with a history of gentrification and marginalization and racial oppression that goes back all the way to the founding of the state. It's a story about the construction of whiteness and blackness and what it is to be born as an individual into a society that relegates people to these categories that aren't essential, that aren't real, but that were fabricated for the purposes of commerce, for the purposes of giving one group of people the ostensibly the right to claim ownership of another group of people because they looked differently than us. And so what a tangled web. If you listen on the Block Radio, we tackle this issue of race a lot. And I got to be honest with you, I don't feel qualified to talk about this. I'm not an expert on the subject. I'm not sure why this is something that is so interesting to me. Well, let me take that back. I am sure why it's interesting to me. I was raised by a Jamaican family, and from the time I was 2 years old, I've been aware of difference and sameness in the pursuit of family and identity, and in a culture that just keeps grasping about, trying to figure out who and what it is that we are. Race is at the very center of American identity and American psychosis and American class. I just got done watching that O.J. Simpson miniseries that was on TV, and say whatever you want about the show and about the time period and about O.J., but I was, as many of you are alive and aware through that whole time, and I lived in California through that and before. I was born in California. And the history of the Los Angeles Police Department with race, the history of the LA Police Department with people of color is atrocious and complex. And, I believe, along with Ta-Nehisi Coates, that it's too easy to point to a single police officer, to point to the people who executed Tamir Rice in cold blood, or Michael Brown, or Eric Gardner, and say, that's a bad apple, that's a bad cop, or that's a racist police department. But I agree with Mr. Coates and others who say that we get the police departments that we want, that communities manifest the laws that they want, and then they manifest those to enforce those laws. And so the racism in our police department is a symbol of and a symptom of the racism within our communities and within our hearts, and it runs deep in America. And I think I keep going back to this well because I sense, like a lot of you sense, that we got to get past this stuff if we're ever going to be a people together. And I don't mean Americans, I mean a human people. We're going to have to dig through this. But I think we got to dig through it in a Mandela-style Truth and Reconciliation Commission. I don't think us white folks get off the hook without a big heap dose of listening and of honesty and awareness and holding space in the presence of some stories that make us uncomfortable. And Mitchell wrote a story that makes us uncomfortable. It's a story of redemption, but it's not a tidy story of redemption. The promotional materials for his book and some of the interviews I've seen and things related to the book, they talk about how some people are survivors of circumstance and some people are casualties and other people are both. And I think the story that Mitchell tells of the mother Grace and of the son Champ really is a story of people that are both survivors and casualties of their own choices and of their own life experiences. It's a great conversation we had with Mitchell where he talks about a lot of things. And one of the things I appreciate about him the most is his unwillingness to simplify things, whether he's talking about gentrification and racism in Portland, Oregon, or whether he's talking about selling drugs as he did when he was a younger person, or whether he's talking about the black community's relationship with police. Mitchell avoids these easy stereotypes, avoids these easy things that make us think too cleanly one way or another. And as soon as we think we have a handle on what it is we're looking at, he throws another angle in that complicates things in this really beautiful and poetic and frequently very tragic way. He's a singular kind of writer that's getting some well-deserved praise. He just won a Whiting Award. That gave him a good, Lydia Yuknovich introduced him at an event today at our college and said, hey, he got a $50,000 check with this award. And why this is important is because, writers, most writers don't make any money. And he was even talking about this in his speech. And he said, this is a terrible grift that I'm running if I waited 16 years for a possible payout. And I agree with them, And the other thing Lydia said is that when writers do get recognized and do get a couple of bucks, it gives them the ability to write more. And Mitchell is a guy that we need to hear more from. At the end of the day, the book isn't really about race and it isn't really about drugs. It's about an individual who, against a lot of odds, steps forward into himself in a way that leaves us with an honest portrayal of what it is to be a young black man in the society, especially in Portland, Oregon in the 1990s. And so as much as it isn't about race, it's a lens to look at a particular way humanity has treated itself in this particular time, in this particular corner of the world. And it's not a clean story. I keep saying that, but the misogyny, the difficulties, the tragedy, they stack on each other one after the next. And it's a frustrating read when you see people almost like watching a slow car crash moving closer and closer into their own devastation, right, into their own rage. And you see that not only is everything in their own families and their own communities stacked up against it, but then these things start to build walls within their own hearts, so where they start to lose touch with themselves and the potential for the people that they could be as well. So the Residue Years, a fascinating story. Mitchell Jackson, a fascinating and funny and motivated young man. We were happy to have him on the show. He came to speak to our students at Mount Hood Community College as part of our Mouths of Others writer series and just lit the room up and blew people away. I was particularly moved by a section of our conversation when he talked about visibility and the importance of that for someone who comes from the background that he comes from. And I was also moved by a section where we had a little bit of a discussion about race and about the social construction of whiteness and blackness and how intimately linked those two things are. And you can't talk about one without talking about the other. So it was a fruitful and eye-opening discussion with a man who's who's experienced a lot and is here to tell us all an honest story about it, a perspective that we need to hear and that we've been able to hear, and we wish him all the best and are so happy that he was able to share some time with us. So Mitchell Jackson, folks, we hope you enjoy the episode, and we will see you on the other side.
Welcome to On the Block with Andrew Gurovich, a podcast about authentic people doing beautiful things. Enjoy the show.
All right, welcome to the program, folks. This is your host, Andy Gurovich. Our guest today is Mitchell Jackson, and I want to get right into it. We have limited time with you, man. I appreciate you being on the show.
Yeah, I appreciate the invite.
So Mitchell, a Portland native, Jackson is the author of The Residue Years, a novel set in inner northeast Portland neighborhoods in the 1990s, a place called the Whitest City in America. I want to get to you on that in a minute. Based on Jackson's own life, the novel tells the story of Grace, a mother battling crack addiction, and Champ, her son, who sells the drug that has ravaged his family and his neighborhood. The Residue Years, which was Multnomah County Library's Everybody Reads selection for 2015, just won the prestigious Winning Award. Congratulations on that,
Thank
man. And Jackson teaches at NYU and Columbia and is also the author of a book of short stories and essays called Oversoul. You now live in Brooklyn, New York, correct?
Actually, I just moved to Harlem. But
Just moved to
New York,
Harlem, okay.
Harlemite now.
Paul Mooney's got a pretty funny bit about it's not funny at all, it's terrifying, but about gentrification in Harlem. And he talks about how like he lives in the whitest neighborhood in New York now. It's called Harlem. Yeah.
Yes.
It's brutal. You've been the recipient of fellowships from TED, the Lannan Foundation, the Center for Fiction, and the Bread Loaf Writers Conference. Welcome to the show, man. I think I already said that, but welcome back.
Thank you.
So I want to ask you right off, there's so much to ask you about, but how are you handling the success?
I'm getting used to the traveling because I'm still teaching.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when I can, don't tell anybody, cancel a class versus when I can't.
Right.
But other than that, it doesn't really affect me. I don't think. Like I'm still trying to figure out how to write this next thing, and I think the beauty of being a writer is you're always anonymous. Like no one knows who you are, nor probably really cares, but people that read books, and that's like this small.
Yeah, right. So you haven't the success. I mean, in one sense, right? I heard there's an old saying that says the best revenge is a life well lived, right? And so I bet in some sense the success is a kind of validation for some of the things in the book and in your life that you've written about in the essays. But in another sense, there's a complication there that I want to get to. But just in terms of time, right? You're teaching writing, you're speaking, you're coming to our campus here to do a reading. So you're reading from the book, you're reading from the essays, you do some entertainment journalism as well. That's done really well. And so where do you find time to write still?
Yeah.
And the passion too, and the energy.
Well, the passion I guess I'm even more passionate now because there's less, it feels like less time to do it. And right now it's just kind of trying to manage the distraction. So, yesterday when I was flying here, I broke out my book that I'm reading for research. Well, actually, it's the Bible. I was reading page on the Bible and taking notes. I know the guy next to me thought I like preparing some kind of sermon or something.
Yeah, right.
But it was actually researching. So, I just do it when I can. But this summer, this will be one of the first summers where I'm not teaching. I mean, I'm working in one program for like 10 days or 8 days. Other than that, I'm just writing and researching all summer. So
I read something about you in an interview with you, and it talked about how you're really an avid reader as much as anything, and you're teaching writing and you're writing, but you're also on intake mode constantly.
Yeah.
And do you find yourself going back to the same folks? I've heard you mention the Bible here. I've heard you talk about James Baldwin.
Yeah.
You were reading, I think, who is it? As I Lay Dying, I think Faulkner.
Yeah.
And, do you find yourself going to the standbys, or do you branch out and checking out new folks depending on where you're at?
I'm definitely checking out new folks. I think I do go back to the same, a few of the same texts. Like I go back to Drown, Junot Diaz Drown every year, a couple times a year. I go back to Jesus' Son, Dennis Johnson, a couple times a year. I go back to Edward P. Jones, Lost in the City pretty often. So those are three. And most of my texts are contemporary that I go back to because I'm listening for those contemporary voices. But I'm also always on the lookout for people that I think can give me some kind of instruction. And so I really take recommendations serious. Like I'm not just going to probably pick up a new book and say, oh yeah, let me just read this. If it's not, great reviews or someone I trust giving it to me, then there's very little chance that I'll pick it up, because I feel like I came to reading so late. I don't have time to read the bad books.
The bad stuff that's there. Yeah. Really, you really want to focus on what's positive.
Yeah.
Or what's really going to inspire you.
Yeah, definitely.
So can I shift gears and ask you about growing up in Portland in the 90s, right? Can you talk a little bit about what that was like? You talk about the whitest city in America, and the book really doesn't pull any punches about what it was like to be in this city at the time. And you've written since about how much of that stuff has not only not changed, but in many cases gotten worse.
I think it's interesting that it's marketing is Bloomsbury, and I guess now it works because a lot of people ask me about that. They're the ones that told me that Portland was the whitest city in America.
Oh, really?
I had no idea.
Really?
Yeah, I had no idea, because in my community, Northeast Portland, it was predominantly African American at that point.
That's an interesting perception. Yeah.
So we didn't, if you didn't leave Northeast Portland very much, you never had the feeling of being a minority.
Okay.
Right? You go to the corner store, they're the people you know.
Right.
You go to the laundromat, you go to the movies, you go to Lloyd Center, you're going to see people that you know. So I didn't have that feeling, even though that world existed outside of us.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was in California a couple weeks ago, Merced, California, and the guy that brought me there was actually an old high school classmate who's now running a restorative justice program in a high school. And we were talking about our high school experience together. And I was like, man, he's like a preacher now. I'm like, yo, you really changed your life, man. And, I'm really proud of what you're doing. And he was like, yeah. He's like, man, listen, one day I was walking home from school, and he had, I guess, kind of been affiliated with some gang members. Yeah. He was walking home from school, and he said some Crips that we both knew came around the corner and just sprayed bullets at him, right? And he said he dropped on the ground, and he thought he was gonna die, and he got up and he ran home. And when he got in the house, he said his mom was like, yo, did you hear those gunshots? And he was like, yeah, I heard them. And she's like, well, what was that? And he was like, I don't know. So he said he didn't want to worry his mother, but he also said, like, man, I went to church that night, and that was it for me and the gangs. And this is like the nicest guy that you'll ever meet. And so
it's amazing.
All of my peers had similar stories like that. And so if you ask me about Portland, there it is. There's the nicest guy in the world is walking home from school, and someone comes by and sprays at him.
And so this was a reality for you. You went to Jefferson High School?
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to make it seem like it was boys in the hood. Like every day I was worried about my safety.
Sure.
But there was definitely that you knew you were never too far away from violence.
Now, I want to ask you more about that. When I moved to Portland in the early 90s, I lived up off MLK and Morgan, just right behind where Yam Yams is.
Okay. And, I know the guy who used to own Yam Yams.
Used to go up there for Juneteenth and stuff all the time. And I'm wondering about like the relationship with the community you grew up in the Portland Police Department, because this has been kind of legendarily problematized and again continues to this day. So a lot of that violence, I guess, was happening within the community. And the book really doesn't shy away from looking at the issues of what lead to those cycles. One of the things that's sort of heartbreaking, my wife Celeste mentioned reading the book, and I'm most of the way through it, is this idea that like you see like the distinction that happens between Champ and his brothers, and he has this interest in intellectual things and education, but his brothers don't. Yeah. And then this rift gets bigger and bigger, and then the animosity starts and the anger starts, and then one brother ends up at alternative school and he likes that even less. And so you watch this anger building, and it's like you're waiting for this, for it to explode, right? It's like watching a car crash in slow motion, and you see the kind of inevitability of it. Yeah. And it's kind of heartbreaking and maddening at the same time. So I really think you brought that into the book in a compelling way, man. You didn't pull any punches at all.
Thank you.
Did you get pushback from the publisher at all, or editorial folks on the language of the book, right, in terms of the vernacular and
no, luckily
so-called N-word use and all this kind of business? Were people weirded out?
I have a really good relationship with my editor. I mean, she's now probably one of my closest friends, definitely one of my, I don't say top advisors, like I got a cachet of advisors, but I call her when it's time to make tough decisions. Yeah. And it's not just about book decisions, it's like life decisions. I'll email or call my editor. And so I really had her support going in. And I really think that this, for Bloomsbury, Residue was like a risk. It was like a high upside and very little downside, because they didn't really invest much in me financially for them to be like, oh, we can sell enough books to make this back. And if it works well, then good. But the other thing was, it was I feel like it was different than what they had published before. So they were kind of like, well, it's an experiment in all areas. So let's go with this language. This is this guy's, and really the language is probably the strongest aspect of what I do. Yeah. So to try to limit that, you're changing me.
You're not getting the author that you want in the book. Yeah, that's what people have spoken to about the sort of spoken word or lyrical quality to it. I asked you a question about the Portland Police Department and didn't let you answer it though. So if you want to go back to that.
Okay, I think just as African Americans, you always have like an adversarial relationship to police, but I think, and we definitely had that, but there were also guys like gang task force police that would always be at like our high school games that would be congregating. When we used to go to the car wash and just post up. This is like more during my drug dealing days than when I was playing basketball. We all would just be there with our systems loud and the doors open and everybody showing off basically, and the police would come by and they knew everybody was selling drugs, but they didn't really harass us. And so I though we did have that kind of, there's like a base kind of antagonistic relationship, I also recognize that not everyone was out to get me, and there were plenty of police officers who gave me passes or who were kind to me or just fair to me when it could have gone another way. I remember one time 2 of my friends got into a really big fight outside of one of my other friends' house, and one of them, like, I don't know if he hit him with a bottle or something. Like, it was a bottle of something that happened and it would burst, and then the police came, but the officer that came, his name is Jackson. I don't know if Jackson's retired, but he's like this little, like 5'6" guy, but he was always, everywhere we were, Jackson was there, like, oh, here comes Jackson. And Jackson came, and because he knew all of us, he was like, hey man, what y'all doing, man? Oh, y'all out here fighting. Look, y'all gonna have to calm this down. Now, anybody else would have gone to jail that night. Right? Or for assault, which was a measure 11. I don't know if it still is. That was like, 60 months minimum. So Jackson just came over, talked to us. Look, we was all drinking. Y'all got to stop this. Be cool, and left. And they made up, and it was cool. That could have went a whole other way had it been a different police officer. So
that's a really interesting point. You do something there in answering that question that I think you do in the book really well, is that you complicate things, right? And I mean that as a compliment, and there's no easy out for anyone here. There's, this is a redemptive story, and there's Roxane Gay said, full of impossible hope, right? And I really think that's an amazing quote because, I want to ask you so many things about the character Grace at the end of the book, and a lot of stuff, but the book is a redemptive story, but not a clean one. I saw in an interview you were asked once about, it's so amazing, how is it that you escaped out of this, totally, and you said, I didn't escape it totally, right? And I think, I saw the trailer for the documentary, and it was saying that some people are both survivors and victims of their circumstances. That's a paraphrase of it, right? And this notion that I think what a lot of people, there's a question in here, but I'm trying to set it up. I think a lot of people, especially a lot of white people, want to be let off the hook when they read a book like this because they get introduced to a lot of things that make us uncomfortable to see about the world we've created and participated in and who the losers of that have been. And then when we see a redemptive story, we go, oh, well, okay, it all turned out good for the kid, so it's all right. And you're like, no, I'm not going to allow that level of simplicity or that level of comfort because it didn't all turn out all right for the kid or the thousands other like the kid. And even though you have fought and struggled and have a success story, it was hard fought and could have gone a lot of different ways for you, and you know what I mean. So do you want to speak to that a little bit about the complexity of the message to white folks that this book presents?
Well, I think the kind of at the base of all of that, the nexus is you got to tell the truth, and the truth is that I am not a clean success story. I don't even know if I am a success story. Like like you're a few weeks, days, hours away from everything turning around on you. Right? Like this book is received well. I could write another book that's a brick and it's gone. Right?
And then everyone goes, oh, the guy was
a one hit. I'm like Milli Vanilli.
Don't say it, man. Well, at least you wrote this one, right?
Right. True. Yeah. No shade, y'all. No shade.
Right.
I think that people do want that kind of, they want something that kind of allows them to be sympathetic, right? And when you're giving someone your sympathy, you don't really have to think about that. You're just like like they almost coerced it out of you, and I don't want to give that to anyone, because that's not how the world works. You know, for as good a year as I'm having, my mother is still struggling with, you know, getting a better job and, you know, dealing with her felonies on her record. Wow. So like, I'm never, like, the night that I won the Whiting, we're talking about how can we address her and her felonies. So it's never, you know, it's never a celebration for me. It's always something in the back going, okay, I'm not good until we all good.
Wow. So the price of that transparency, you know, you write this story and it says based on your life, but did you, you know, in the book of short stories too, did you ever worry about sharing this kind of stuff? Did you ever worry about what it was going to do to your family, what it was going to do to your career, your image, this kind of stuff? How did you navigate that?
Yeah, I mean, I thought, well, they're going to know I went to prison. Like, I'm never going to be able to have a professorship. I thought, you know, my family members are going to be mad at me. But ultimately, I thought, you know, it's my story to share. And even though, like, I write about the relationship between my mother and I, like, that is my vantage. And I've talked to her because she was upset for a little while. And I didn't even know it when I wrote the book. She waited like 2 years later to tell me this. And I said, you know what, Mom, this is just my side of it. You know, if you want to tell the story, go ahead and do it. Like, write the book, or, you know, do what you need to do to tell your side of the story. I didn't do it maliciously. I was trying to tell the truth, but I also recognize that it's subjective.
Right.
But the other thing is I really believe that my wound is my bow, right? So like the tough things that I've gone through have turned out to be the very things that have given me strength.
Yeah. We're going to take a break for a second and then come back and ask you a few more questions. Is that all right with you?
Yeah.
All right, folks, we will be right back after these words with Mitchell Jackson.
Thank you for listening to On the Block, free radio that's worth twice what you paid for it. Be right back.
Okay, so this section that I'll read is a Champ's section. And I think I should mention here that I got the nickname Champ from a guy who is no longer with us. His name is Harry Villa. Harry wasn't a great citizen while he was with us for some of his years, and he actually was murdered in prison. But he struck me as a guy who had a lot of heart, and also as someone whose nickname I always admired. And the person, I never got a nickname. I pined for a nickname and never got one. So I said, well, you know, Champ has the best nickname, I'll just borrow that. So I guess that in some way this is homage to Champ Harry Villa. This chapter is Champ, our young narrator, who's younger in this section, going out for the first night into what I imagine was an area in Northeast on probably Church, like 9th and Church. If you know Portland, imagine that area on 9th and Church where it kind of gets a little circular. So this is the area that I'm speaking of. And so the epigraph of this is what happens. Peoples, have you been wondering how I got in this in earnest? How it starts is this. I'm a freshman in a polytechnic high school, and homecoming is coming soon, too soon, because Mom's been out for days doing what I know she does, plus a whole bunch of other shit I don't even want to imagine, with a welfare check that won't be a welfare check when she comes home. How it starts is Mom's on a mission, which means the chances of her, as promised, copying me a homecoming suit, homecoming shirt, homecoming tie, of her having the ends to give me to cop my homecoming date, a box of chocolate and a corsage, the chances of her footing 1 penny of my homecoming expense when she slogs in is looking about the same as the odds for us, me, my mom, and my bros, making a year in any one place without a shut-off notice, lights, phone, heat.
So what do? What I do is approach my friend, who's only a year older than me, but already a young star in the curb-serving cosmos. My friend agrees to front me a sack, which ain't a sack, but a few blonde shards wrapped and tied off in plastic. He offers me the dope on consignment and tells me that if I do it right, I'll double up. Both petrified and excited, I carry the dope home, carry the package in my fist, and keep my fist in my pocket the whole way, terrified it might slip through an unbeknown hole or into the abyss, or worse, into plain view. That same night, I wait till my bros fall asleep, lock the windows and both the doors, and strike out wearing a hoodie and jeans with my tiny package held so tight, this time it leaves an imprint. That same night, I head out dreaming of easy double up, of a sale. I dream of returning triumphant to school the next day to pay off my debt and cop another package. Dream of hustling the cash I'll need for fresh new homecoming gear. A flower for my pretty young thing, and enough left over to line my impecunious ass pockets with loose bills. I trek to a part of Northeast everybody with an active brain cell knows is crack central. A mise-en-scene chock-a-block with aspirants like me, with not-so-young dealers, with dope heads darting in and out of shadows, or grumbling up in cars with their windows dropped low. Only, I go out that first night without clue the first of the protocol, not to mention with a heart much too meek for the comp. Serious competition. I'm talking a wannabe or in the midst of being D-boy on every corner. I'm talking one-man shows, talking two-man shows, triumvirates. And all accosting without a second sphere, it seemed, each and every would-be buyer. Me out in the thick of it, bones a-rattle, too punkish to open my mouth, and after a while, cursing myself for being out at all. Me posted on one corner and then the other, with hope rocket blasting out my chest towards the stratosphere. Plus, the brand new dread that my mother, that Grace, might be wandering this dim universe. What happens? I don't make a dime that first night. Don't make a nickel nor penny either. Don't make a cent that next night or the one thereafter. It takes a week of dry runs to realize I ain't built for this life. That if this is how it has to happen, my too soon homecoming will come and go without a working budget. Yeah, I catch a tiny epiphany, but what about what I owe my friend? I'm new to the game, but smart enough to know the rules, the tacit laws on returns and refunds. It takes a week of ducking and dodging my friend, known for his quick temper and quicker fists in the halls, before I work up the nerve to approach him in the lunchroom, to explain that I tried and tried, but I couldn't get it off, to admit I ain't cut out for the game, to say, sorry, but can he please take it back and squash my tab? My luck, sometimes it's luck, and lucky for me, he does. So I quit, that's it. Quit and don't see another one of those plaque-colored pills in person till right after high school. But the week after graduation, with my corner shortcomings worn down just enough, I buy a sack with part of the scholarship I won. Buy the sack dead set on being discouraged. Buy it with the intent of softening the fact that my D1 hoop dreams are all but deceased. That for the next 2 years of life, it's community college in a twin bed at my mom's. But of course, I take the scholarship loot and cop a big double-up sack for my quick-fisted high school homie and trek one night to a brand new crucible. But this time, I make a sale. This time, I make a second sale. Translation, this time, it's on. I go from double-up to a quarter ounce, from a quarter ounce to a half, from that half to the full OZ. I go from 1 OZ to 2 OZs, from 2 to 3 OZs, 3 to 4.5 OZs, and some nights I feel as if I can't be stopped. It's as if I can't be stopped. In half a year, it's as if by some stroke of the blackest magic, I'm buying quarter kilos from a guy with the mint-conditioned old-school Benz and a bevy of gold chains. You want to know how this happens? Are you listening? It gets better, or bigger, I should say. A year or so later, it's drought status, and my gold Flossing Connect has been out of pocket for so long, I'm thinking he may never be in pocket again. So I make a few calls to see if I can get a pack to last until my Golden Connect re-ups. This friend of a friend gives me the number to Mr., who I hit up and ask to speak about business. Mr. tells me to swing through, and I count the ass end of my re-up funds and drive to meet him. It's an early Sunday, so the streets have that empty, apocalyptic feel they do before the city stirs. Mr.'s store is closed, and I knock an eon before he answers. He locks a behemoth bolt behind us and leads me to the back of the store, but instead of discussing what I came for, he goes on about this mentor he had as a boy growing up in South Central. He explains the mentor was a white man from London who ministered to him and his boys on British culture, about places like Buckingham Palace and the Houses of Parliament, on things like bespoke tailoring and the King's English. Mr. tells me that years after he started clocking the kind of bread he needed machines to count, he spent a few weeks a year in England, every time copying a closet of Seville row suits, spread collar shirts, and silk ties fat as a forearm. He gives me the monologue, and only when he's done does he lead me downstairs. He stands at a bistro table stacked with bills, as if it's no more than a table scattered with old copper pennies, and asks what he can do for me. I show him the cash and ask if he can sell me a little something till my connect gets right. Mr. flashes the kind of teeth Hollywood types pay a grip for and tells me it's too bad about my boy being out of pocket, but that he's a man of abundance. He waves off the money I brought and digs into a duffel at his feet and takes out a duct tape package the size of a book, the first whole one I've ever seen with my eyes. He quotes me the price, complete with new customer discount, and tells me to bring him what I owe him off the top. He leads me upstairs, unlocks his many-bolted door, pushes it open, says, "Be safe," hella dispassionate. With the first brick I've ever laid eyes on tucked in my sleeve, a trillion doubts knocking around my hard skull, and a ruthless, rapid-ass heart, I totter out into the mall. How this began in earnest, there it is, people. There it is.
Feeling all right?
Yeah,
so far, man? Excellent. Thank you again for doing this. This is awesome.
Last time I was on campus, I was playing for PCC.
Oh, really?
Gave y'all like 27. And
you dropped it, huh?
Yeah.
He took us to school, huh?
Take me back to the gym.
Well, let's jump back into it, folks, because I want to ask you about that. Welcome back, folks. We're talking to Mitchell Jackson, and I want to ask you about Square Bear Mitch. Let's go back to those basketball days, and let's talk about that. You were at Jefferson. You said last time you were here, you were playing. You were a PCC, and you came and dropped 27 on us.
That's right. Check that. That must have been like 96. We can go back and look at the box score on that. Make sure I'm telling the truth.
Now that Jefferson team was the highest scoring high school team in the state. For a little bit, wasn't it?
Might have been, 92 probably. I don't know. My senior, 92 we were really good. We had there's a guy in the community named Tony Hobson that started Self Enhancement Incorporated.
Yeah.
And his son was our point guard. His name was Tony Hobson Jr. and he actually had an aneurysm while we were playing in '92 in the tournament.
Oh, wow.
And he was like, "Mom, my head hurts, and then they took him off the court and took him to the hospital, and they were like, if he had stayed on the court a couple minutes more, he would have died on the court.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, so that year we ended up taking third in the state, but it was like...
Which ain't bad, having lost your starting point.
Right,
yeah.
Exactly, yeah. But yeah, man, basketball was life for everyone. You know, we every day we were always together. The weekends we would all call each other, say, okay, we're gonna meet at this park, and we'll play all day, and then we'll go out at night and hang out and get up and do it all again.
Why did it represent that to you? To everybody?
I think it was like we didn't even have the ability to dream outside of that. Like our visions of success were basketball players, and so that was everyone's dream. I realize now that it wasn't really my dream, but I just didn't have another dream. So it was a fill-in dream while I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. But I mean, it gave a life to, a lot of my friends are either coaches or running clinics, or, some of them, couple of them made it to the NBA or made it overseas. So it did give us a life. And once you see that, you see the guys coming home and they're living.
Got a couple bucks, yeah.
You want it. I
saw an interview with the guys from Outkast once, and they were saying that in Atlanta, exactly what you said, there was 3 ways out. Yeah. And it was playing basketball, being hip hop artists, or selling rock. And so guys would try those first 2, but if you didn't get a record contract, if you didn't get signed to a team, guess what the third option was, right? Yeah. And so they ended up back. A lot of guys would try to do something else and then just ended up back doing that. And I saw an interview early on when Obama first got elected with that pastor he had that everyone hated, Jeremiah Wright, and he said something really interesting. He had a program where they would bring to that church in inner city Chicago. They would bring like black stock market guys and black dentists and black attorneys to come talk to their youth group. And the same thing, he said a lot of these kids had never seen a black dentist or a black attorney or a black stock broker, and they said, I didn't know you could do that. I didn't know that was possible. And that leads me to a question, because you had talent in the basketball court. I remember you saying in an interview somewhere that when you were selling drugs, you had a 4.0 in school, so you had aptitude in school. There seemed that you had ability, and it, folks were saying you were a good writer since the day, and yet still you made the choice to start selling drugs, right? And was it because you just couldn't envision other opportunities for yourself?
I think that one of the things that especially young, I've been trying to critique this idea of blackness and whiteness, so I'm going to use the term just for now, because I can't do the whole critique. But one of the things that young black men especially want is to be visible, right? And so that's why basketball and football and drug dealing looks so attractive to us, is because it gives us a sense of visibility in the community and at large, right? And so that's one thing that being a stockbroker or a dentist or a lawyer does not give you, they think, right? Not unless you're like Johnny Cochran. And then but for the average lawyer, he's not really visible in the community. Right. And so that's not attractive, because the guys feel anonymous. There's this line in there where he says, I don't want to be anonymous everywhere but inside my head. Yeah. No, he wants to be visible. And so though I was good at basketball, just good, not great, and I was a good writer, I couldn't see how that was going to make me visible. Yeah. But I could see how selling drugs could make me visible in my community for the 2 or 3, the nights that I go out. Right. Like even now, I walk around with a lot of stuff on that probably I shouldn't have on because I want to be visible.
And part of it, too, is uncomplicated, and you talk about it in the book, too. It's just somebody who's tired of doing without, man. There's just a frustration of just never having money for some clothes or for something, what you want to eat, or for, you know what I mean? And then at some point, when there's an access to that, when you live in an economy, David Simon talks about this, when the only economy open to you is the black market economy, it's uncomplicated why people choose to expose themselves to it, because they're trying to get money, right? Just like everybody else is.
It's very simple then,
I'm really fascinated by that idea. I want to ask you a couple more questions about that in the book. Do you want to go back to talking about a little bit about what you were saying about your critique of blackness and whiteness?
Well, that's what was my TED Talk. And basically what I said, I couched it in this time when I was robbed by this guy, and he wasn't a friend, but he was someone that went to high school with me and that I knew personally. And I said one of the reasons that he was able to do it was because he saw another black man when he pulled the gun out. I was about to say pull the trigger. He did not pull the trigger. And then I say that it's very easy to critique this idea of whiteness and white privilege and, white supremacy. Like if you ask the common person, like, should we do away with white privilege and white supremacy and white power? They're like, of course.
Yeah.
Right. But then I said that whiteness is forever connected to blackness, right? That the idea of blackness came out of whiteness. And so when you say, let's get rid of whiteness and white supremacy and white power, you also must say we need to get rid of the idea of blackness because they're connected. As long as we have black people, we'll have white people because white people made up black people. I was just asking my class the other day, I'm like, so when were black people born? They were like, I don't know. And I was like, well, I said, if you go to Germany, what do they call black people? And I was like, I think Germans. I said, well, if you go to England, what do they call black people? And they say, English. Yeah. I said, well, when you get here, what do they call you? And they're like, black. I'm like, yeah.
What is that?
Blackness is born in America.
Yeah.
Right? So we have to, I see them as a tandem that we can't get rid of one without the other. And so I don't know what the new way of thinking of it is or the new term for it, but I know every time I say blackness or whiteness, I'm reaffirming the idea that these things need to exist.
When I see, when I hear you saying that, and when I, read Ta-Nehisi Coates' book, and when I see like folks like Dominique Christina and the poet, the slam poetry she does, especially the poem Karma, or here more locally, Walida Marisha in her work, there's this notion that it's far too easy to oversimplify these things, right? And then the I don't see color, or we should get rid of this kind of thing. There's a willful blindness there and an ignorance there that has to negate so much experience in history. And I think to complicate that, right, and to say, hang on a second, when Ta-Nehisi Coates says it's too easy to say that that's a racist cop or even that's a racist police department, right, where we get the community policing that the community wants and has tolerated and has indeed asked for. And so these things are a manifestation of things woven into the very fabric of the thinking of the people. It's not just some rogue racist cop, right? And the sooner we can start thinking of that, the sooner we can start thinking of change in these situations. And I think you're hitting on similar kinds of concepts there.
Yeah. Well, one thing about Coates, and I was thinking very strongly about him when I wrote it because he argues for like this kind of deconstruction of white, but he also says, what is he talking about? We must protect the black body, right? So even he is critiquing whiteness and reaffirming
blackness.
Well, he's reaffirming whiteness, right? Because when you say black, you're always reaffirming whiteness.
Fascinating.
Yeah. So I don't know where to go. Like I don't have the answer. Yeah. But I do see that there needs to be a different level of critique.
When you talk about that invisibility, can I go back to that for a second? Sure. Because we saw you did a wonderful job hosting the Oregon Book Awards last year.
You saw me stand out.
Yeah, and there was that one moment when you stood out and you were like, I just got to say, I look good, right? And I looked over at my wife and she was like, you look good. And I was like, damn, we got a problem. But that confidence, that level of self-confidence and that ability to really stand in that moment, I think people can maybe misunderstand that, right? Because, I've read and talked to folks that have looked at this in even in hip hop culture, that kind of bragging motif, right? Where when one maybe looks at that from the wrong lens, it could be like, oh, who's this guy, think he is or whatever, right? But when you're talking about people who for one reason or another structurally have had something reinforced that takes away their dignity, that the stepping into that is a kind of beautiful and empowering thing. I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the things that hip hop understands it because it's born out of that, right? Like it's born out of braggadocio. Yeah. But literature does not understand that at all.
At all.
Because really, at its ground level, literature is about wealth, right? Like the people who are creating it, the people who make it, all of those people are from means, they're from wealth. And so they're always trying to downplay their wealth. They don't want you to know about it. But I don't come from that. So the minute I get something, I'm going to let you know that I got it. I'm here.
Yeah.
Right? And so, yes, you can look at it as like maybe he should temper that. But the other part of that is, again, I want to be visible. And I'm really not doing it for them. I'm doing it for the person that comes behind me, the young guy that says, I can't be visible being a writer. Well, yes, you can. Right? do it the right way though. Like really study because the other thing is like when I stand out there and I do that, I recognize that residue is behind me.
Yeah.
And if you don't like me, you would have a hard time dismissing my work.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not just a guy just out there grandstanding with nothing to back it up. So I'm also aware of that. Like when I do it, like I did this thing over here already. So now every time that someone stamps it, the Whiting stamp or whatever it is, I know that is just more ethos for me when I'm out in the world.
It's a powerful answer. We got a few minutes left to ask you a couple more questions. You can hang around for a minute?
Yep.
All right, folks, we're going to take our last break, and we'll be right back with Mitchell Jackson.
I was in school. I wish I was in school. I wish I was in school.
Summer isn't fun when you're hungry.
If only I had a big test today. Or a book report to give. Give me a math quiz. Give me some homework.
If your child relies on free school lunches, we can help provide them with free meals this summer.
I'll stay after class. I'll clean the chalkboard. I'll keep my desk real clean.
So they can stop worrying about food and start focusing on fun.
I'll do extra homework. I'll clean the class pet's cage. I'll skip recess.
School might end, but free lunches don't have to.
I wish I was in school. I wish I was in school.
If your child relies on free school lunches, we can help provide them with free meals this summer. Visit feedingamerica.org/summer meals to find your local food bank for help. Once again, that's feedingamerica.org/summer meals. Together, we're feeding America. A message from Feeding America and the Ad Council.
This is Walida Imarisha, co-editor of Octavia's Brood, and I would like to say in the traditional greeting of Klingonese, Kaplach. Welcome.
If the music make you move, 'cause you can dig the groove and groove on. Groove on. If you feel like you wanna make love under the stars above, love on. Love on. If it's something you wanna say, and talking is the only way, rap on. Oh, rap on. 'Cause whatever boy you do, oh, you got to do your thing, yeah.
All right, so I realized in the intro, Mitchell, that I called it the Whiting Award, and it's prestigious. I'm a professor of literature, and I think I have a blockage in my head of calling it the Whiting Award. There's a sick There's a sick irony in giving you something called the Whiting Award, all right? You know what I mean? Like, I feel like there's a problem there. Couple more questions about the book, if you don't mind. The Champ, we're introduced to a character that is a complicated character, right? And Champ has and I've actually heard you talk about this in the book of essays as well. Champ has a particular view of women, right?
Yeah, I'm reading about that today.
Yeah. And I'm wondering, I don't want to ask you anything as pedantic as like, how much is Champ like Mitchell, right?
Yeah.
But I just, have you gotten some pushback from readers? Have you had people misunderstand this or speak to it in ways that bring a lot of anger out of folks, right? Because Champ, not only towards the girl who's going to be the mother of his child, but all of the other women that he's cheating on her with. And I always felt like it was a kind of displaced anger at his mother that he can't safely display directly to her. And so it's got to come on every other female that he meets.
I think that's a really accurate way to kind of view this. I'll say that the Mitchell, not Champ, there's the guy that I love, the guy that raised me. He was really a pimp, right? And so he used to take me around with him to go do this and do that, and he would give me advice about how to treat women or not treat them. And I'll never really I'll never get over that, right? That's at my nexus. And so that shaped a lot of how I view women. And then, you go 20 years of watching your mother struggle with addiction and lose her dignity and do all of these things that harm you. That also helps shape how I view women. So I've spent my adulthood trying to deconstruct that and get as far away from that as I can. Not always as successful as I would like to be, but I realized that that's at my core. And when it was happening, I didn't even realize it was indoctrination. I was just like, I love this guy and I love hanging out with him. And I don't even think that he did, because he was doing the stuff from when he was like 13 and 12. And so it's just, the cliche blind leading blind. That's really, he was creating another him, but he thought he thought I was going to be better than him, but better in the areas that he valued.
Yeah.
And so, there's a lot of that. And my editor, whom I love, one of the major critiques that she had was she was like, yo, you really have to watch how you're characterizing women. And so I actually went back and did some work on this. So what you're seeing now is after
it's dialed back a little bit now.
And one of the things, but I said I can't take it all out because then I'm not being honest. So
did you fear that people wouldn't like the character?
Yeah,
or would be so traumatized by stuff like that they would have a hard time resonating with him? Or did you not even worry about that? You just said, I'm going to tell the truth.
I tried not to worry about it because the other thing is I know these guys exist.
Yeah.
I've lived with them. I've talked to them. I know how they think. And if you are dismissing them, you're dismissing a large part of the population of men that I know. There's blowback. Like someone was just a writer friend of mine was telling me, she was like, such and such writer don't like you. And I'm like, I never met her. She's like, yeah, she just doesn't like them. She thinks you're misogynist. I'm like, but she don't even know me.
She don't even know. Yeah.
Yeah. Like you read some fiction and now I'm a misogynist.
Yeah. The mistake is made that you are champ in an uncritical, unreflective way. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a bit dismissive of the process and of what writing is. That's really fascinating. What I want to ask you about in our final minutes, and I might come back to that misogyny thing if we have the time, but I don't want to run out of time to ask you about Grace, because at the book ends, I don't want to give it away for people, right? They just need to go get it and read it if they haven't yet.
Yeah.
And I want to conclude with asking you a little bit about what's next, because as great as this is and all the great press you're getting for this and how it's moving for people, this was from a couple of years ago, so I know you don't just want to be known as the guy that did this thing in 2013.
No.
Right? You got a lot else going on as well.
Yeah.
But with the character Grace, at the end, we don't have a nice, tidy ending. Things kind of fall apart for both characters again. And then she's, in a position where she's, and again, I'm trying to be vague so people can just go read the book, where she's in that spot like you were talking about. She's both a survivor and a victim of her own circumstances. And she starts kind of coming back to the scripture and some of these kind of hopeful views. And there's that element of hope in it, but it also is kind of tragic because it also seems kind of delusional given her circumstances and everything that's happened. And I was wondering, did you want to leave people with that kind of uneasy feeling of the cycle maybe starting itself all over again? Yeah. Maybe this person's on the way out. Does anyone ever really get out? Can we ever really outlive the things that have made us who we are?
Yeah. Well, that's it. You said it. Like I live with that every day. Like, people always ask me, so how's your mom doing? Is she, is she clean? I'm like, as far as I know, but there's tomorrow.
Right,
and I hope that there's, that she's clean tomorrow, but I don't know. People ask me like, well, how are you doing? I mean, well, yeah, things are going good now, but I don't know what I would do if I was dead broke. Like, who knows?
Right.
And so I wanted that to be a part of the book because that is the real world. Like you never get out of it. And even if I feel like I have achieved a status that keeps me from going back there, my friends haven't. Like I got a friend that's coming home after 17 years and probably 2 or 3 months, and I'm like, what can I do from him so that he doesn't go back? Like I'm like, okay, do I get him clothes? Do I buy him a cell phone? What is it that I'm going to do to help? Because this is a guy that was there for me. Like, this ain't somebody that we saw in passing. This is someone who, like, genuinely cared about me. So there's a responsibility that I see to do something that's going to help put him in a position where he doesn't go back.
It's beautiful. What was that like for you in our final minutes here to go back to McLaren and actually go read from the book and speak to those guys?
That's Sandy M. I did go back to McLaren.
Sandy M. Yeah, okay,
so,
sorry.
Man, that was like... there's been some experiences since then, but that was like surreal. That's the best way to describe it. Like that was the first time I had ever gone back to a prison since I was released.
Wow.
And to walk through the yard, oh man.
The video of you up at that podium kind of gathering yourself before, I mean, it gives me chills just thinking about it, man. You can really see like everything about you in your previous life coming through your head at that moment that brought you to that place at that time.
Yeah.
The guys received it really, really well. Huh?
Yeah, man. It was like,
that's powerful.
It was like being in there with family almost. It was guys in there that I like went to high school with, and we used to play against each other. And then there was a guy that came, he was like, yo, my uncle's been down since 84. And he was like, yo, I was your Uncle Sally, man. I know your uncle. I'm like, wow.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
You think you're the guy that inspired Damon to write that reflective essay about himself? And
I don't know. You know what?
That was really good.
Stud has been, he called me sometime or he'll text me, and I know that he's paying attention to the writing. So maybe I texted him the day I read that. I'm like, yo, man, even if you dictated that was pretty good.
That's something good.
We got to fix that POV in there, but other than that,
you're giving him critiques. I love it. That's for real. Well, Mitchell, what's next, man? What's on the horizon?
Narrative nonfiction called Survival Math. It explores some of the same stuff in Residue, but it expands on it. It's talking about the history of America, Reconstruction, the history of Portland, Oregon, blood donations.
Vanport and all that time through there.
Yeah. So the thing that bothered me the most about Residue is that people kept talking about it as art, but not as something that was intellectual property. And so I figured, well, I know how to make you pay attention to my mind. I'm just going to write some nonfiction.
There you go. Fascinating, man. So there's not a chance you want to tackle that hill as well.
Yeah. So that's the next thing.
And that's still part of this need to be seen. And I mean that in a positive sense, right? Like you bring something to the table and you want to make sure people take notice.
Well, my need to be seen is now about a legacy. And I don't mean like 100 years from now. I mean like the guy that I go see in such and such group home, or that's 17 years old, that really wants to be visible but doesn't know. He only has these 3 or 4 different avenues. Like, I want him to look at me and go, man, that's possible.
As a conduit.
Yeah.
That's possible for them too.
Yeah.
So your work in the prisons and your work with students is really a way to do that.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Mitchell, thanks for speaking with us, man. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for the opportunity, man.
Our guest has been, I stepped right on your thank you. Our guest has been Mitchell Jackson, folks. We really appreciate you being with us. If you haven't read The Residue Years yet, go check it out on your website, mitchellsjackson.com. Lastly, real quick, status of the documentary. Is that still going to happen?
Man, it's Lit Hub probably next week or maybe the week after. It's going to show in 3 parts, so it'll just be available. Not selling or anything. We're posting it. I'm working right now. BuzzFeed is a partner. Well, hopefully they're a partner, and Vibe Magazine. So we're blasting it out.
The trailer's on your site and it's beautiful, so I can't wait for folks to see it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for being here, Mitchell.
All right.
We'll see you folks on the other side.
You've been listening to On the Block with Andrew Gurovich. The show is produced in Portland, Oregon by Michael DiNapoli at MD Productions. Theme music by Cat Power. Closing music by Jonathan Oak. Look us up on the web at ontheblockradio.com, where you can also link to us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Don't forget to tune in next week for a brand new episode. Previous episodes can be found on our website. Thanks for listening.
Oh, you beautiful kitties. Oh, look at you out there. Creators of art, of history, of thought. New minds looking at this world and our lives. Beautiful, beautiful, like a bolt of lightning in your head. Trying to tell you to remember that the world is a paper-thin veil over the truth. We've got our fingers in the seams. We've got our ears against the wall, listening, waiting for the voice of creation to speak our names, to call us back from the brink. It's 11